Previously, we talked about why did Pope Benedict XVI resign. We focused on sexual scandals and homosexuality in the church. We also focused on the Vatican Bank scandals and the role of Vigano. And today we're going to turn our attention to the recent letters of Pope Benedict XVI that actually address his resignation. These were made public in the New York Times within the last 24 to 48 hours. And here to discuss those developments and also the role of Freemasonry in the infiltration of the Catholic Church as it relates to the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI is Timothy Gordon, the author of Catholic Republic. Timothy Gordon, welcome back.
Thanks a lot.
So this morning we texted back and forth about this recent story that was all over the internet, including the New York Times. And Pope Benedict XVI is discussing why he resigned. Not a lot of details, but there are new details that we haven't seen before. And you and I have been talking on YouTube, on the podcast, and in iTunes about the resignation of the Pope, Pope Benedict XVI, the election of Pope Francis, the St. Gallen Mafia, the Third Secret of Fatima. All those videos are on YouTube if people want to watch them. And this new info comes directly from Benedict XVI himself. And I want to lead off with just a quote that Pope Benedict writes and then get your take on it. So Pope Benedict is writing a German cardinal, and he says this: "I can very well understand the deep-seated pain that the end of my papacy has inflicted on you and many others. However, for some people, and it seems to me also for you, the pain has turned into anger that no longer merely concerns my resignation, but increasingly also my person and my papacy as a whole." End quote. And I think Pope Benedict XVI is rightly aware of sadness turning into pain, turning into anger. This is kind of a common progression in grieving. Honestly, losing a father, that's what we did. That's what happened when Pope Benedict XVI resigned. And, on Twitter last week, I did a poll and I asked, for the sake of sanity in the church, which papacy should we return to find guidance? And lots of people voted in that poll. And I was really, alarmed or surprised to see that last place in that poll was the papacy of Pope Benedict XVI. And it seems to indicate what the Pope himself expresses, that there is a pain that is turned into anger. So what do you think's going on in the mind of Pope Benedict XVI? And what do you think about these new revelations with these letters?
Well, first off, there's an implication of Pope Francis, which is very interesting, given Pope Emeritus Benedict's election thus far to be really, really quiet, even in the face of invocations for him maybe not to be quiet, right? I mean, what I'm saying is, it is a strange thing, at the very least, we'll call it strange, to say there's sadness about my choice to leave and the conclave's choice of successor to me, which has gradually turned into a kind of bitter anger. So for the first time, I think, in the course of this emeritus pontificate, he's acknowledging that there is de facto grief and de dicto rebellion against this new Pope, Pope Francis. So to me, that's one of the subtler points. I want to get it out there in the first line so that it doesn't get overlooked. That's a sea change.
It was remarkable too, is when when I was in Rome last year, with so many priests and good Catholics, but mainly the priests, there was this sentiment almost every cappuccino and every glass of wine, back when Benedict, and there was this nostalgia in Rome. I'm telling you, I was there the last 3 years, and last summer there was this deep nostalgia among priests back when Benedict was here. And I picked up on that. But everyone assumes that Pope Benedict has become senile, he's old, he has no idea what's going on in the church. He's just saying his daily mass quietly and going about his business, and he's very weak. And this seems to indicate that he is aware of trends and currents in the Catholic Church.
Right. It's not the first time, by the way. You're exactly right. It's not the first time that he's indicated that he knows what's going on. we've had a couple sort of poppings up of his head from Castel Gandolfo there, technically in the Vatican, where he had. I mean, remember the Siebold interview there was a lot in there that was almost an implication of Francis. We don't have to go into it, but it wasn't quite this stark. You know, you reminded me of something when I was living in Rome with my wife when we were first married, studying at the Greg in 2007 and 2008. It's funny. It's quite a contrast between you being there in 2017, because I loved Benedict. I was a loyal son of Benedict, and a lot of the Irish and English and not even radicals, they weren't as wildly enthusiastic for his pontificate as me. I guess now they've learned to embrace a father that in the original days they didn't appreciate. But I think the other point that bears mention once about Benedict is we're all trying to get a sort of feel on what his temperament is like there in Castel Gandolfo, because we don't really know. I don't mean to sound over speculative, but we don't really know what the conditions of his life are. We do seem to know, like you said, that his mind is in pretty good shape, but we don't know that he's not being, basically suspended under house or something very like a house arrest. We're not 100% certain what his internet connection is. I mean, to sound kind of wonky, not the relative speed of his internet, but whether or not he has it there in the castle. So it's worth saying that it might be everything on the right end of the spectrum, from he's living a comfortable life, doing what he pretty much always wanted to do, living out a scholarly existence as Pope Emeritus, this made up, out of whole cloth fabrication. Or it might be the other end of the spectrum, which I think, Dr. Marshall, is what you wanted to talk about. Like, is he, was he forced out? Because this has been the elephant in the room.
Right.
If he was forced out, that would, it's a conditional claim. If he was, then yeah, the conditions of his life are not the comfy, Holiday Inn miniature suite that we're imagining.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah. And for those of you that are just joining us or getting into this conversation, in the top right of your screen right now, you'll see a link for the video I did, Why Did Pope Ben XVI Resign? And it references the recent Vigano testimony. And that's good to watch. It doesn't make a slam dunk case that Pope Benedict was compelled to resign, but it does show all the factors of moral corruption, the 300-page dossier, the Vatican bank scandal, the role of Vigano in exposing that Vatican bank scandal, and also the role of Vigano with Cardinal McCarrick. So check out that link in the top right corner.
Well, one other thing, sorry, that I was going to say real fast is we have, forget the dubia cardinals, we have at least one documentary bit of evidence that Cardinal Brandmuller, at least one cardinal, is complaining. I could have used a less elegant term, but redressing the fact that the Pope left in not so glowing terms. He doesn't like it.
Is it evident that this is Cardinal Brandmuller?
In the New York Times piece, not in the Bild piece, does it say so? In the New York Times piece, right after that quote that you read, it does report Benedict wrote this in a November 23rd, 2017 letter to Cardinal Walter Brandmuller of Germany.
Yeah,
all they said in the
the bill didn't. It said an unnamed cardinal.
I think
So that itself,
German.
that it's a dubia, one of the four dubia brothers, is a big deal.
Yeah. No, it is. I just saw that right this instant, looking at my screen behind the screen. That is a big deal that it's one of the Dubia brothers. I like that.
Yeah. So, we've talked about previously Vigano, the Vatican Bank, moral scandal. Today, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into a century-old problem, and that is the problem of Freemasonry. I'd like to identify what Freemasonry is, and then how it is that Freemasonry has tried to attack the church, both outside and inside. So for someone who's, maybe has an uncle who's a Freemason, but has absolutely no knowledge of what Freemasonry is or how the Catholic Church understands Freemasonry, give them a 45-second explanation and definition.
So Freemasonry is, so as not to mince words, the arch nemesis of the Roman Catholic Church since at least 1717, St. John the Baptist Day, June 24th, 1717. The Freemasons declared themselves the enemies of the church, and we can get into the morphology of the Masons and how they stepped up their game and how they translated their attack to a 20th century attack. But at least since 1717, they have declared themselves the enemy of the church, and the church has always recognized this. This is not a one-way fight. There are more papal encyclicals on Freemasonry condemning it than any other singular topic on which a pope could write an encyclical. In June of 1917, many of you might have heard the story about one of our favorite 20th century saints, Maximilian Kolbe. He witnessed the Freemasons parading through the Vatican, celebrating their 200th anniversary, their second centenary.
This was in St. Peter's Piazza. Yeah.
Right.
Not in the church. Not in the church.
Not in the church, in the Piazza, yeah. But right outside. And they were processing around in celebration of the June second centenary, carrying banners with the words, quote, "Satan must reign in the Vatican. The Pope will be his slave." And, of course, this was 5 months from the Bolshevik Revolution, which ended up playing this anti-Marian role throughout the entire 20th century. So anytime we're talking about Marxism, Masonry seems to be sort of the dark side. I have this article from the Catholic Answers magazine, the July-August 2017 copy. It's written by yours truly. And the title of the article is "The Great Modern Attack on the Church, Light, Dark, and Invisible Modernism, 1517, 1717, and 1917, connecting what happened in those three centenaries." The Kolbe thing is really big because he marked, as you talked about, Dr. Marshall, 100 years as a sort of meaningful time frame for the infiltration type attack. Again, the long and the short of it is that the Freemasons acknowledged going into the 20th century, culminating with this 1917 parade, that they were translating their attack, that these external attacks on the church do not work. They say that's what the French Revolution was. And they're going to begin with this infiltration that we've been talking about really the last 2 or 3 videos. Yeah.
So the founding of Freemasonry is given the external date of 1717. But you also speak in that article of 1517, which is the year of the Reformation. So tie that in a little bit.
Yeah, so this goes back to the thesis I put forward in my book, Catholic Republic, Why America Will Perish Without Rome. Really, the most potent tool at Satan's right hand has been modernism, this attack of modernism within the church. So, you don't get a lot of followers as the Prince of Darkness, pitching it as the spiritual combat, right? Agnosticism being what it is in the world today, it's not all that effective. You only get people that are already committed.
We need to define modernism, right?
Right. So modernism, that was coming next. 1517 is, of course, the Protestant Reformation. And modernism is essentially, there are 100 different valid definitions of the term, but really what it is the casting against one another, the divorcing, to put it another way, of faith and reason, to say that faith and reason conflict with one another, that philosophy and science on this hand contradict the truths of theology on this hand, because philosophy is the greatest formal natural resource man has with his intellect. Science is the greatest material natural resource that man has at his disposal. And of course, theology is the greatest supernatural resource that we have through revelation. And the Catholic Church has always taught that, science is the lowest, philosophy is next, and theology is queen, and they all work together. And that basically most of the beginning truths of theology are knowable certainly, which is to say apodictically. You can know them certainly, mathematically, logically, through the intellect alone. The intellectus adequates the ratio, is what we say in philosophy. And all this means is that science at a lower level, philosophy at a somewhat higher level, will help you prove the knowable aspects of the faith.
Which is not necessarily a Catholic idea. Aristotle talks about theoretical knowledge as being above practical knowledge and investigative knowledge. So he doesn't have the idea of a supernatural revelation like we do, but the philosophical tradition, even before Christ, recognizes the philosophical as highest. We have on top of that, we have philosophy as the handmaiden to the queen theology. So it's not like this is something that Christianity invented. It's part of the philosophical Western tradition. That's right.
As a matter of fact, Aristotle probably would have become Thomas Aquinas, at least as a scholar, and gotten the bald haircut and maybe put on 200 pounds or whatever. Right. At least Dominican philosophically, Dominican habit. If he had revelation, the only thing he didn't have that Aquinas had was revelation. Yeah. And that's a big missing piece. But that's the point, is that 1517 was the Protestant Reformation. And aside from lopping off, tradition from Scripture and all the sacraments and all of that in the magisterium, it's a lot. These are a lot of addenda.
It's a lot of chopping.
It's a lot of chopping. But the main philosophical tool that was lopped off there by Martin Luther was Aristotle, was Aristotelianism, because
and reason.
Aristotle is
Luther says reason is the great whore. She has to be cast out. She's always deceiving man.
Right. She illumines like filth set in a lamp. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Luther is rejecting. What's ironic? We talked about this before in a previous video. Is that within the religious origins of the Reformation is a rejection of reason, but within 100 years, reason becomes queen, and everything in faith gets subject to reason. And that's really like when we get to the 1900s, modernism is subjecting the faith to reason, to human science, and excluding the formal and the final causes, or excluding the supernatural specifically. So the miracles in the Bible, the Red Sea is really about some volcano that put, red element in the water, and, people thought it was blood, or, Jesus feeding 5,000 is really just everybody goes and breaks their sandwich in half and shares, and everybody has something to eat. It's and the resurrection of Christ is really just the rising of Jesus in our heart through faith, and community and being good in the world and social, justice programs and all that. So it's taking the deposit of faith and reinterpreting it in light of what's assumed to be valid reason and valid science. But really all it's doing is just emptying out the supernatural from Christianity.
Right. Saying that the important thing there is the assertion that any kind of rational scrutiny will empty out the supernatural content.
Yes.
Whereas the church has always taught a rational scrutiny of the miracles of Jesus will not empty out the supernatural content. It might, at a certain point, for one thing, Leo XIII talks about it is modernism. It is a heresy, the heresy of modernism, to say anything less than that monotheism can be knowable and proven through the reason alone. Yeah. And that, the articles of faith pretty much pick up from there. We have to accept Jesus' miracles as an article of faith. But we know there has to be one God as an article of reason. Yeah. So it's not it's the pitching against one another of faith and reason, absolutely, and saying that that's where the content is drained. Yeah.
So what would you say to someone like, oh, my uncle's a Freemason? Is he just secretly anti-Catholic and wants to get rid of all Catholicism and make the Pope a slave to Satan? most people are hearing you say that, and if they don't know much about Freemasonry, like, oh, this guy Timothy Gordon, what's he saying? My uncle's a Satanist. So I think we need to nuance that just a little bit for listeners who, maybe they haven't read any books on Freemasonry or, looked into the history of it. What is it? If you're a high level Freemason, if you're the guy that Maximilian Kolbe sees marching around with a banner, Hail Satan, what's going on there? What's the worldview?
The structure of the hierarchy of secret societies is esoteric, meaning at a lower level, when there are 33 degrees of blue masonry or whatever, or maybe just the lower third of those are count as blue masonry, the low masons. Shaquille O'Neal's a blue mason, right?
Right.
He didn't know what's going on the basketball court, much less the secrets of the world. So your uncle is not necessarily worshiping the devil on his his midnight beer runs on Saturday nights, right, when he goes and gets together with his Mason buddies and they wear the funny hats. That's why the church condemns secret societies, not just Masonry. It's because I'm going to make a reference and date myself. In the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie of
it's getting deep.
1991.
Yeah,
it's getting deep now. Master Splinter looks at this kid, Danny Pennington, who he's befriended as part of Shredder's gang. I can't believe I'm going into this. And they become friends, and he says, well, you know what? You're actually wearing the logo of my arch nemesis. He told him this long story, and he says the arch nemesis is actually the head of your gang. And so Danny throws the thing aside, and he's ashamed, naturally. This is sort of what happens with a lot of Catholic students at Catholic schools, non-Catholic hating Protestants, who do have a more checkered history with the Masons, by the way. But a lot of them don't hate Catholics, and they'll literally have their little Grand Lodge ring, like Shaquille O'Neal shows it on NBA on TNT half the time, not even knowing like Master Shredder and Master Splinter in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, what's going on, that really you're donning the crest of the arch nemesis of all things good in this world.
Yeah.
So it's not all their fault. And same thing with the Protestants. If you look at
the higher levels, they are bowing to Bahamut, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're Satanists. But in order to have minions, you have lower ones who, donate money and show up to drink beer and talk and volunteer at the hospital or whatever, and
make connections. Yes. Is how it's pitched to a lot. Beer and connections. It's like a softball game. It becomes a policeman softball game or something like that. So but
the idea is to unite all religions into one Luciferian, Gnostic, one world faith.
Right. Wrong-minded ecumenism.
Yeah. It's a non-supernatural fraternity that strives for worldwide inclusion.
Right, and it's something like the third so there are like 33 lower degrees, and then it gets higher, and we don't really know. It goes up like a mountaintop rising above the clouds. We don't know where it goes after the 33rd degree, but at I think the 31st or 32nd degree, people should look it up. You'd swear an oath on the Quran. At varying lower levels, you're swearing religious oaths from variant world religions, some of them ancient. It's really strange, and it's not. I mean, I don't mean to wholly exculpate anyone who gets involved in the Masons. They're not necessarily Satanists, but come on, it's been.
Yeah. If
your uncle is a member of the Masons, you need to get him out, because they are, on public record, the sworn opponents of the Roman Catholic Church and the sworn agents of modernism, which is really, like we were beginning to say, the main way that the devil seems to be getting his way in the world today. It sound crazy when you talk like this, but it works. And there was in America a very strong connection for many, many years until the middle 1940s between American Protestants who wanted to keep out the Catholics and Masonic groups. And this
Yes,
has
absolutely.
a strong history.
I'm in Texas. Almost every small town, as you drive into it, is a sign that says the Freemasons welcome you to Schneider,
Right.
Texas, or whatever it is. It's
Right.
And from what I've been able to understand, it's primarily in Texas the Baptists and the Freemasons had a connection, which surprises some people.
Look up Hugo Black. We probably don't have time to go into this because it's a little bit on the side, but look up Justice Hugo Black, a major influence on the Supreme Court from the 50s to the 70s, to the early 70s. And he was a Freemason. He was known for his fervent anti-Catholic speeches. His best friend said Justice Black can give an anti-Catholic speech like you've never heard across the South. And in 1947, when the strong anti-religious interpretation of the First Amendment started coming out of the Supreme Court with a case called Everson versus Board of Ed, there were 7 out of 9 justices on record were high-ranking Masons. Yeah. The highest majority ever claimed by the Masons on the Supreme Court on public record, no tinfoil hat, was a decade later in the mid-50s. 8 out of 9 were Masons, and it was after World War II, late 40s, early 50s, that the perversion of the First Amendment came out, which really pitched church and state against one another, which was just a development of pitching reason against faith. Yeah. Church and state being cast against each other is as unnatural as casting reason against faith. And the Protestants have a checkered history with this. That's why I called it 1517. Yeah. It was an early form of modernism, taking Aristotle and reason out of Christianity. This developed into 1717, where the Masons really said, let's not be about working with stone anymore. Let's make this a speculative club of speculative Freemasons who are committed to fomenting revolutions around the world that will take down the Roman Catholic Church. And the French Revolution, the Mexican Revolution, the Russian Revolution were all attempts at so doing. But they were noticing as they made these revolutions that they weren't effective, because the Catholic Church, as everyone here knows, is hardwired to hard weather attacks, onslaughts from the outside.
Yeah. Martyrdom is the seed of the church. The blood is the seed of the church. So
right.
you can have the French Revolution and kill all those sweet nuns, but their blood calls out to God, and it just strengthens the faith of the people, and the church comes back stronger. So they saw that, and they realized, hey, you know what? Let's stop killing the nuns. Let's go in and infiltrate the nuns. Let's go in and infiltrate the monks. Let's go in and infiltrate the priests. Before we go into that, though, I just want to go back to a point you made before. You said something like, I don't begrudge your uncle for being a Mason. I just want to clarify that for everybody, that being a Freemason excommunicates you from the Catholic Church traditionally. It's a mortal sin. I've been able to meet several times Father Rippiger, who's a famous exorcist priest, and I found out that one of my ancestors was a Freemason, and I was talking to him about this, and he says, well, you need an exorcism for your family, because the Freemason vows actually have vows upon their progeny that are intergenerational, which I didn't know. And so he said, well, let's do it. I said, can you do it right now? He got the holy water, and he gave us the whole family exorcism to break the bonds of Freemasonry over ancestors. So as a family, we had that.
Wow.
So it's a serious deal. If you had a grandfather or a father or a great-grandfather, whatever, it's something you need to look into, because he said in particular the vows and the oaths of Freemasons upon their progeny relate to divorce, is what Father Rippiger said.
Really?
It's a demon of divorce, yeah, and of lack of faith. So it's a big deal. Like, we're not talking about some guys who drink beer and talk about how bad the Catholic Church is. We're talking about demonic, preternatural forces that enter into the soul, enter into families, and reap great destruction. Okay, so
for sure.
That being said, I want people to think, wait, if my uncle's just like a second-level Mason, is that cool? No, not cool. It's bad.
It just means the only disclaimer you and I were making is it doesn't mean he's willfully worshiping the devil or something like that. That's
but he has bound himself to the coven of Satan, whether he knows it or not, which is dangerous.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about, what everyone's interested is, infiltration. 1917, they make a a switcheroo. They decide, okay, we're going to do something different. We need to infiltrate the church with Freemasonry. Obviously, that relates to modernism and false theology, but how does it relate to, all this homosexuality we're seeing in the seminaries and the episcopate and the priesthood, child abuse, not just in America, not just in the Pennsylvania grand jury report, not just with Ted McCare, we see it in Chile, Argentina, Italy, Ireland. It's everywhere. Obviously, something has happened. How did Freemasonry accomplish this? Or was it Freemasonry? Some people might say, well, it's just sexual revolution. It's not Freemasonry.
No, because the strong implication is it's not simply an accidental byproduct of the sexual revolution. This is whistling past the graveyard, right? It's a lot more deliberate than that. A lot more calculation went into the formulation of the homosexual scandal in the church. There is specific evidence, there's specific documentary evidence that both the Freemasons, dating back as far as 1846, with this document called the Altar Vendetta, and then a few different intercepted documents in the early 1900s. We've made reference to these in the last two videos from Marxists, that both of them were interested in corrupting the two aspects of Roman Catholicism. The end game is corrupting the first aspect, the doctrine and the dogma. That's really what they wanted. That's because this is the diabolic psychology, to take down the Roman Catholic Church by disrupting the deposit of faith, which can never be disrupted if the church is what she claims she is, right? But you do that as you do the facet number two, which is to disrupt the claims of credibility of the church in the eyes of, or we won't say the eyes of, as according to the Vox Populi. And the common people never really care exactly what's going on with philosophers and theologians. So there's indications from both the Masonic documents from the middle 1800s and the Marxist documents from the early 1900s, strong evidence.
And I just want to interject here.
Claims.
Marxism, communism, is a worldwide fraternity that rejects the supernatural.
Right.
Religion is the opium of the people. I mean, Marxism is just politically what Freemasonry is as a philosophy or as a devotion.
Well, and on this aside, Marx, Stalin, and Lenin were all Masons. So there's this weird thing where the party of Soviet Russia outlawed Masonry or something. So you get people, know-it-alls begging to differ on that point. I don't know exactly how it worked, but Marx, you see the hidden hand thing where they put the hand in the jacket. Marx, Stalin, Lenin, I think Trotsky were all Masons, high-ranking ones. So, yeah, I'm aware of the slight contradiction involved by the USSR outlawing Masonry. I don't know if they're just covering their tracks or what, but yes, the overlap.
It's like they were officially atheists, but then eventually they allowed a church. I mean, they have to make concessions,
right?
Even if they're opposed to their agenda to gain power.
Right. That hidden hand thing is real, and Napoleon Bonaparte. I mean, look at all the famous composers throughout history doing the Marxist hidden hand. This is the way to show affiliation before. And you'd say, why would you do this? A big part of secret societies is hiding in plain sight. And before the advent of the internet, there really wasn't any way for people to do any more than speculate about, well, what's that hand in the jacket thing Napoleon Bonaparte did. So I forget precisely what question you would ask Dr. Marshall, but it's
1917 infiltration in the church.
Right.
What if someone just says that's baloney? I don't think the Freemasons had that much power. And they'll say, yeah, look at, up until, they can pick a date, 1950, 1962, 1965, whatever. Things were great, so how could you say that the Freemasons got into the church?
Sure. Well, there's a lot. There's just loads upon loads of evidence, like a lot of these issues we've spoken about over the last two videos. There's evidence that is not controverted. It's just muted, and that's usually because when you're dealing on the kind of fault line between, weirdo conspiracy theory and bona fide conspiracies like Brutus and Cassius killed Caesar. I mean, sorry, they just did, and it was called a conspiracy, right? That's not a conspiracy theory. When you're on this fault line, the best way that I've found, just speaking to your audience from the heart for a moment, to parse the great from the small or the true from the untrue here is conspiracy theories, which are for potheads and, wackos, tend to involve a lot of claims that have been highly controverted using highly sound methods. Whereas the sort of conspiracies that are literally flying beneath the pages of your history textbook and between the lines are the ones that are just not addressed. And what's seldom addressed in the church today, just to go back about 50 more years, is this intercepted document, the Altar Vendetta, from the highest lodge of the Italian Masons called the P2 or the Carbonari. And it was circulated.
Why is it called the P2?
I think this is just the English translation. There were two P2 officers in the Vatican Bank who actually went to jail in 2012. So it's that same Carbonari. I forget why it's the P2. Some people say it's a fraternal organization like the Freemasons. It's actually wrong. It's part of the Italian lodge. It's a higher lodge. It's not part of the Blue Masons. That's all I know. But as far back as 1846, republished in 1859, and then republished again all throughout the 1880s as Leo takes the pontificate and is doing things like the St. Michael prayer, which you covered. Gregory the 16th, Pius the 9th, and Leo the 13th, and then Pius the 10th are all asking the Catholic faithful, as they're publishing encyclical after encyclical after encyclical on Masonry and giving an automatic excommunication for practicing it, they're asking the public to read this document called the Altar Vendetta. So I think it's really funny when folks out there in kind of the Catholic mainstream, which is drifting further and further away from what ought to be mainstream, try to sully the reputations of folks like us who are pointing at the Altar Vendetta. You can go listen to it on YouTube. It's been published, and Pope after Pope after Pope went into his own pocket in the late 1800s to mass produce it and ask the faithful to take time to read it, because it described in detail not only the doctrinal corruption that was coming in the 20th century through this infiltration, but the moral corruption with strong insinuations that it would be a sexual corruption, which the Marxists 30, 40 years later were really explicit about, a homosexual corruption. But it's all there. And again, it's all there in the Marian prophecies anyway. But look into the Altar Vendetta. It's not controverted. It's not controvertible. It's simply a muted point.
So we have the Masons, P2, global Masonry, which is connected, as we've stated, with communism. And they're saying to one another, hey, we can't just wage a war against Vatican City. We can't just go kill the Pope. Right? They'll just canonize him. He'll be a martyr. He'll be Saint, so-and-so. So what we're going to do is we're going to send young men and young women into the religious establishment and over decades gain a foothold to make our influence known. And that influence is doctrinal and moral, faith and morals, right? 1870, we have the Pope ex cathedra, infallible on faith and morals, and then there's this attack, right, on the faith and morals.
Right.
So the idea, is Belladad related to this, or is it just a strictly communist thing when we talk about Belladad?
I've never seen, Belladad's with the communists, working for Soviet Russia, doing the specific attacks on the morality of the priesthood, of the morality, the decaying morality being taught in the seminaries and what's allowed, orgies in the avocado gardens and things like this that you hear credible tell of. That seems to be more of the Marxist approach, and this is a broad generalization. The Marxist approach seemed to focus more on infiltrating and corrupting the priests' behavior themselves via the encouragement of misbehavior and the emplacement of homosexual Marxist moles. This seems to be the main form of the attack. The Freemasonic attack seems to focus more on the smarties, on the erosion of doctrine. If you had to paint in very broad lines.
Yeah, ultimately it's the same marionette strings being, pulling the hands and the levers of these plants.
Right. Yeah, there's one other important thing that just because it's a nice connection, Dr. Marshall, to your Pope Leo the 13th emplacement of the St. Michael prayer. He's writing, I think in 1884, he had either just released or he's about to release Humanum Genus, which says everything that the Altar Vendetta, which he went into his own pocket to publish, also said about Freemasonry, naming it by name, a couple decades after it had first been published for the Catholic faithful.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's the same. It's 1884, so it's the same year.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah. That's what I thought.
Same year as previously we discussed Leo the 13th having the vision in which Satan asks for a time period of Jesus to destroy the church.
Right.
And some sources say it's 100, some say it's 80, 70, 60. It is kind of an apocryphal story, but we think there's historical weight to that. We talked about that in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see the link to that video if you're interested. Real quick, if you want to follow all this and just catching in, on my YouTube channel, there's a new playlist that's just the Catholic Crisis Analysis, and that this video will be in there and all the other ones. So you hear us referring back to the things we've already covered. That's the playlist where you can get all the stuff that Timothy and I have been discussing, and others.
Nice. 7 years before, we'll forget this, and if we move on to Pope Benedict or whatever, 7 years before Maximilian Kolbe saw this second centenary celebration of the Masons in St. Peter's Square, Pope Pius X, who had also been one of the primary opponents against modernism and had talked some about Freemasonry, put in place on September 1st, 1910, an oath against modernism in a motu proprio document where all clergy, all pastors, all confessors, all preachers, religious superiors and professors in the seminaries and Catholic universities had to take an oath against the modernist heresy, which we began this video talking about, because of the Alta Vendita and because of the agenda of Gregory the 16th and Leo the 13th, his precursors in the pontificate, giving this warning about this attack, this infiltration is coming in the 20th century. I feel like it's not responsible to undersell this. You and I can't say it enough.
Yeah. So let's say someone's like Timothy Gordon. That's awesome. Alta Vendita. How long is the document? What's the investment so people can think about it?
The investment is, I've started it and read about the first half. So I think it's only 65 pages. Yeah. It's not particularly long. The commentary published by John Nari, who we've talked about, he passed away about a year and a half ago. He's a good man, traditionalist Catholic. He gives some commentary before and after. So it's about 65, 70 pages all told. It's basically an anti-apostles encyclical. Yeah. And just listen. It's very florid language. It sounds almost like Bane from the third Batman movie, talking about, except more, with less desultory. There's more purpose there. Talking about, look, the one great line is that the goal of the French Revolution remains their goal. The soldier will die and the war carries on. And really their end is the end of Voltaire, which is the destruction forever of the Christian idea, of the Catholic idea, and even the Christian moment or something like that, if I'm remembering.
And, if someone's watching like, this is crazy sauce, I don't know what these guys, conspiracy theory. I mean, just think about it. 1917, Our Lady of Fatima. Big deal, right? Approved apparition. As we said before, largest public miracle since the Red Sea being parted. The most witnesses, right? Maximilian Kolbe, great saint and martyr and apostle of the Blessed Virgin Mary, also sees 1917, right? 1917.
Yes,
he
sir.
sees Freemasonry being explicit about their Satanism and about their desire to make a pope the slave of Lucifer, right? That's all in 1917. 500-year anniversary since Martin Luther, 1517, right? And so, and now here we are. This video is shot in 2018. We just finished 2017, and man, stuff's hitting the fan again. It's like clockwork. It's like the chimes are ringing. And the fact that Our Lady would come down to planet Earth, I said in one of the previous videos, there's not that many apparitions, and then everybody in the comments like, well, there's this apparition, this. Okay, well, fine. Yeah. If you want to say there's a dozen or 20 or 30, still after 2,000 years, that's a rare event for Our Lady to come down and talk to us. Rare.
It is.
And then to come down and give us the greatest miracle, arguably of the New Covenant era, in 1917, means stuff's going on in the church. I mean, she's talking about, you got to pray your rosary daily. Russia needs to be consecrated. She's talking about communism. She's talking about Stalin. She's talking about world wars. I mean, she's talking about popes suffering. All of these things are wrapped into Fatima. So, I mean, just taking Fatima alone, we have to acknowledge that there is an attack on the church from the inside. The clergy and the Pope will suffer. There is, and we're all suffering. And the answer to it is, as she says, devotion to her. 5 First Saturdays, right. The Holy Rosary every single day. If you're watching this video and you're Catholic, you better be praying your rosary every single day. 365 days a year. It is the gospel on beads. It is a meditation on the Gospels, on the life of Christ, the death of Christ, the resurrection of Christ, the crowning of Our Lady, everything. Like, this is the solution. But we have to be, in order to use the solution, when you know what the problem is. And I want to kind of wrap up with the resignation again of Pope Benedict XVI, because it's on everybody's mind, especially right now with all the controversy in the church. Vigano, Pope Francis, this mystery of silence where the Pope will not answer the accusations. And seemingly he will not do anything yet about our problem in America with ex-Cardinal McCarrick, Cardinal Wuerl, grand jury report. We have all these, a dumpster fire here in America, and the guy at the fire hose is saying, I'm not going to do anything yet. I want to go back to this quote from Pope Benedict XVI. He says, "Pray for me that I may not flee for fear of the wolves." He says this right when he becomes Pope, first day.
It's unbelievable.
So already the Pope is saying there are, and this is the language of Christ, wolves in sheep's clothing. He's saying, the wolves, I am now amongst the wolves as your Pope. Pray for me that I do not flee. And this is kind of prophetic. We're wondering that, with these letters that were just released with the German Cardinal Brandmuller, and he's being criticized and he's trying to defend his choice, but already on day one, he has this statement, pray for me I do not flee for fear of the wolves. That raised the question for us. Did Benedict flee for fear of the wolves?
Well, it's a strong evidentiary claim when you say, look at the beginning, look at the end. You could be guilty of the, post hoc fallacy or whatever, of course. This is an airtight. But I mean, that's not an ordinary way to begin the execution of an office, is it? This is not ordinary in any sense of the term. The ordinary way to begin an office is, hooray, thank you, I'm going to do my best to humbly dispose of this office in the best possible way for the life of the Sensus Fidelium, the life of the church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to begin this way, knowing the enemies that had existed in the St. Gallen Mafia. He knew them very well. He knew they were organized against him. They were already in place. They were already mobile. They were already taking action. And Benedict's a very, very intelligent man. To end the papacy, then, 1 year after this, we're still holding our breath, right? This set of dossiers containing the largest 300-page write-up on the Lavender Mafia, who's presumably the wolves.
Right. This is the homosexual cabal covering for child molesters, covering for Marcio Maciel, with Sedano, covering for McCarrick, covering for all over the world.
Right.
These are the wolves. These are dangerous men. We hear of cocaine-fueled orgies in the CDF.
Yeah, in the office.
Yes.
Yeah.
So something is infiltrated.
Right. Dr. Marshall, there's this video you and I talked about of Cardinal Ratzinger arriving home in Germany and being coldly greeted by cardinals. Would you show this? It's worth showing, I think.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. Here it is.
Słyszymy te brawa, cały czas papież jest oklaskiwany, przywitanie jest tutaj z przedstawicielami władz kościelnych, z biskupami niemieckimi, z kardynałami. Bowiem na początku tego oficjalnego powitania to najpierw prezydent przedstawiał Ojcu Świętemu swoich pracowników, można powiedzieć swojej kancelarii. Tym razem Ojciec Święty, że przedstawia członków orszaku papieskiego. No właśnie, czyli tutaj razem Jak zawsze widzieliśmy, Ojcu Świętemu towarzyszy sekretarz stanu stolicy.
What you see there is evidentiary, right? It's not all dispositive, but what people out there who aren't lawyers don't seem to understand, through no fault, because of the movie depictions of the way that evidence works, is this all really counts. Circumstantial evidence adds up. And when he's getting there and his own countrymen are refusing to shake his hands, and some of them are some well-known German archbishops and cardinals there's a really strong case being built. You look at the beginning, you look at even before the beginning of his papacy, arguably when he was the acting pope as CDF, and we know what has been reported ad nauseum about the St. Gallen Mafia. Actually, not ad nauseum, not enough still.
Right.
You and I have been talking about it ad nauseum, but you know what the moving parts were there beforehand. Then day one of his papacy, he has this odd statement. He was hated by the world media, by the Freemasons who arguably run the world media. And he was hated by his own countrymen. Some of the worst cardinals are the Northern Europeans, the Belgians, the Northern French, and the Germans.
Dutch, the Germans,
The Dutch.
Yep.
And then we know that the St. Gallen Mafia ultimately got its stated goal. Its stated goal was a certain man who wound up assuming the papacy. Now, all these things can be coincidences.
Yeah,
Bergoglio.
Yeah. Who got second place in the conclave that elected Benedict XVI.
2005, which is bizarre. You don't know how bizarre that is, because it was supposed to be for both 2005 and 2013. There's a couple. Who was it? There was an Italian archbishop. I think it was the Archbishop of Milan in 2005. He no longer was. He was a communion and liberation candidate who was actually announced as the Pope before Francis in 2013. Things would have probably been much different if it had been him. And I'm forgetting the name. But except he was the second, in Vegas odds, there was a third candidate, a fourth, a fifth. And Bergoglio was not on any odds makers list by 2005.
But for the insiders, with the red hats, he was.
Of course.
Yes.
Well, they're the ones voting.
And we have Cardinal Daniels and others saying, we're working on this. St. Gallen Mafia. So
since the 90s.
We even have Cardinal McCarrick on a video saying that an Italian gentleman suggested that he raise awareness about Bergoglio for the conclave. McCarrick.
I forgot about that.
McCarrick.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Sleazebag of the entire church, you know. And McCarrick is also the one who was going to China and working out these deals for the church to submit to communist China, to the state.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I mean, it's all connected. This whole the communism, everything, the sexual impurity, it's all connected. And it's now that we lay people who are watching and looking at what's going on, we're like, oh yeah, this is starting to make sense. It was so strange that all these things were happening. Oh, now it's one narrative. It's actually one meta narrative that fits.
The meta narrative of entropy, of chaos, the second law of thermodynamics. It works against us always, right? It's easier to break a glass than to, you know, weld a glass together or whatever you do. But it's controlled chaos. And that's why it's all of a piece, to use Patrick Coffin's favorite term, right? It's all of a piece because it's not pure entropy. It's diabolic entropy. It's calculated miscalculation.
It's fallen seraphic planning.
Psychology, without a doubt. And people should be able to see this. I mean, I understand that the people that work outside of the church, you know, unlike you or I, that their heads aren't in this 8 hours a day like yours or mine is. And I understand that they're a little slower to take it in, you know, white collar type people that are probably a lot of your viewers, blue collar people that are just looking at this an hour a day at most. Fine. I get that there's a lag time, right? And I think so do you, but we're calling on people at this point. It's an invocation to really take up the mantle of our beautiful patrimony and Holy Mother Church. She needs to be defended, and exactly how to go about that is not quite clear at the outset. Like any kind of invocation is never clear at the outset, but it's clear now that there's well more than enough evidence. The two synods, all the fishiness of the last decades, culminating in this last decade, we need to know and to at least start spreading the word and to quit regarding anyone with the truth on their lips as a weirdo. You know, I mean, this would also be convenient for guys like you and me because we don't want to be weirdos, but it's time for it to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even, you know, when I first became a Catholic, this kind of stuff I all thought was for weirdos, but the longer I've been in it, the longer I've been around seminaries, the longer I've been in Rome, the longer I've, you know, read this stuff every single day and followed it, the more and more I started scratching my head and then looking into it and then realizing there is a serious infiltration. And the fact that we had in the past 100 years, Fatima and a Pope resigned and all this chaos and moral chaos, something's going on. The devil is at work. So I think it's a good place to stop there. But I want to encourage everybody who's watching to pray and fast. But as we mentioned before, the cure is rosary every day. It may not seem like a big deal. Oh, praying beads is kind of boring. No, pray those mysteries. Get into those mysteries. Think about those mysteries. Pray the rosary. Do the first 5 Saturdays. Draw close to our Lord. Be devoted. Be good moms and dads, priests, deacons, you know, whatever your vocation is. Strive for holiness. This will pass.
Yes.
And the church is all the baptized faithful, but it is chiefly those who are in heaven with Christ reigning. We have to remember that. We can't just say the church is so corrupt. No, the church, there are parts of the church that have been corrupted, but the church herself is pure, and the doctrine is pure.
Church triumphant. Yeah, the church triumphant. They're the majority of us.
Yeah, and we need to focus on that. You know, we need to focus on that. So, Timothy Gordon, thanks so much. Your book is Catholic Republic.
Why America Will Perish Without Rome.
Yes,
thanks.
Absolutely.
And also, if I could give a quick plug from this issue of Catholic Answers, my article in here I think is really lined up nicely. It's the July-August 2017. I believe now it's available online.
Perfect.
And it lines up the Marian stuff with the Freemasonic stuff, with the Marxist stuff.
And that's where you do the 1517, 1717, 1917. Yeah, you're going to have to write another one, 2017 at some point, right?
That's right.
It seems that's an important year.
Yeah,
as
no, it
we
does.
move forward, looking back, like, wow, that a lot of things broke in 2017. So, all right, well,
Heaven
thanks so
help us.
much, Timothy Gordon. If you enjoy these videos,
Thanks.
please like them. Please subscribe to them. You can listen to them here, Spotify, iTunes, and thanks so much. God bless.